Welcome, Pewter Report readers, listeners, and viewers to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius. It's a Victory Monday edition of the Pewter Report podcast, Energized by Celsius, and I am John Ledyard from PewterReport.com. With me today is Scott Reynolds, also from PewterReport.com, and we get to take a little step back and look at the entire NFC picture, the entire NFL picture, honestly, and see where do the Bucs fit into this thing. 6 games into the season, 1/3 of the way through the NFL season. How do they sort themselves out in the midst of the mess that's around them in this division and in this division and the conference and across the entire NFL? Looking forward to doing that with you here on the show today. It should be a pretty good time, I think, jumping into all of this. So we're excited, Scott, to take a look at the Bucs and dive into some of these things. But there's some roster moves that have just been
breaking
made.
News.
That's why we're a couple minutes late jumping into the show here. That Jaden Mickens has been released, the Bucs' reliable return man, and it looks like Jalen Darden's going to be the guy for the foreseeable future, Scott.
Yeah, it certainly comes, at an interesting time because really it's nothing that Jaden Mickens has done wrong, right? I mean, I thought he's done a credible job, not incredible, but credible job with regards to punt kick returns so far. And really what it's doing is it's forcing Jalen Darden into this role where he is going to be the kick and punt return guy. And kickoffs, maybe not so much of a problem anymore because of so many touchbacks in the NFL, but punt returns, that's an area that he had a couple of decent returns in the preseason, also fumbled one, was able to recover it. But it's certainly going to put a big spotlight on the rookie who has not gotten much playing time at all this year, being inactive several games. So we'll have to see how that transpires. But John Mulchin coming back from injured reserve, they had to release somebody to get him on the active roster. And so Jaden Mickens was kind of a luxury because they already have a guy that they drafted in the 4th round that they wanted to take over that role this year. And Mickens beat him out in the preseason, John. But I think ultimately right now the future at that position is Jalen Darden, not Jaden Mickens.
Yeah, it is. And I'm with you that Mickens was obviously fine. He was fine last year. More than anything, I like the fact that he's reliable. He's never fumbled or muffed one. I know there was one that was fumbled that ended up coming back this past year. But yeah, that's what I like about him more than anything is that you know what you're getting from the game. He's not going to put you in positions. He rarely misplays things. Smart player when he's out there on the field. So appreciate those things about him. I think just want the upside. They want to get Darden active. They feel like he's ready. He's been probably catching returns and practice for a while now, for a couple weeks now. And so I think that they feel like he's ready to make that jump. And if so, there's no real room for Mickens. But I do think the loss of Mickens in the locker room, I'm not saying it affects wins and losses. It's just, I think he's very popular among the other players. And so we'll see. And he can still come back to the practice squad if he does.
That's true. Yes.
With another team.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case because this team does like Jaden Mickens. Like you said, he hasn't done anything wrong. It's just that it's a luxury to have both of those guys on the 53-man roster, and they don't want to take a chance in trying to put Jalen Darden on the 53-man roster just because he was a 4th-round draft pick. And sometimes, there's that intrigue around the league, and you miss out on guys in the draft, and you have an opportunity to bring them in. And we've seen already Khalil Davis get plucked from the Bucs when they tried to put him on the practice squad. It didn't work out. And that's why Kyle Trask is on this team as the 3rd-string quarterback when really Ryan Griffin has more experience in this offense. And if something were to happen to Tom Brady, that they would put Griffin in there as the backup spot to Blaine Gabbert in that situation and not really play the rookie Trask. But because Trask has got the draft status, that's why he's on this active roster. And that's the same thing in this case for Jalen Darden, who has not really proven anything yet, but has a lot of potential.
Yeah, for sure. It's a good point, Scott. And I think that that's something that the Bucs are kind of considering and weighing with this Darden move. It's like he's maybe ready to make the jump that somebody like Trask may or may not. We'd see if obviously in case of an injury, but may or may not be ready to make. And it seems like they feel like Darden is ready. So we'll find out. We've got a cornerback that's on his way to Tampa Bay as well, a free agent signing that we'll talk about in a second too, as well as getting into all of the rest of the Bucs games, the schedule, the NFC, the NFL in general. We're going to tackle it all today, Scott. We're going big. And so I'm excited about it on this Monday show. And I'm especially excited because I'm energized by Celsius right now. Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy, Scott. I've got the sparkling strawberry guava here. 0 sugar in this thing. Tastes amazing. I've been trying to work my way through the variety of flavors that I have left, and it's amazing how many flavors there are and how good all of them taste while being great for you, no crash, and giving you this healthy energy that kind of keeps me powered throughout the day.
For me, it's Celsius Heat today. I'm going with the orange sickle. This has got that creamsicle flavor taste that I love. Reminds me of eating those creamsicle bars, and of course the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with those creamsicle uniforms. What a great flavor, orange sickle. It's different from orange, but it's got everything that I want in it from a performance energy drink. And just like the regular Celsius products, John, the Celsius Heat has the same thing, no sugar, and that means no crash. So you get the energy without the sugar. And it's a fantastic energy drink. You can find out where you can pick up Celsius near you by going to Celsius.com, clicking the store locator, and then it'll pop up a bunch of convenience stores, health and fitness stores, grocery stores, and some of the bigger box chain places where you can grab a can of Celsius, find out the flavors. I was going to say flavor, but it's really flavors, John. You can't just pick just one. I've got a handful that I love, and I've got another handful that I really like. So it's got a great variety of flavors for your palate, and then when you want to narrow in on one particular flavor or the variety pack, you can go to Amazon and buy them in bulk and save a lot of money, and it'll ship it right to your house.
Absolutely. It's great stuff with Celsius. All right, Scott, the Bucs have signed a free agent cornerback. His name is Bleedy Ray Wilson, and if you've heard of him before, it's because he's played for the Falcons for quite a while. Bleedy Ray Wilson he was drafted by Tennessee in the 3rd round back in 2013. And this man has just been hanging on, Scott, hanging on everywhere he's been. He's done all special teams. He's started a few games here and there. At one point in 2014, he started 11 games for the Titans. That was the worst graded season of his career per Pro Football Focus. So maybe the large sample size exposed some things. He's only started 6 games since that point, but he's consistently been an extra cornerback, played a couple hundred snaps the last 2 years for the Atlanta Falcons, and actually graded pretty decently now. He's almost 32 years old. So the Bucs are just looking at vets, looking at smart players, looking at guys who can play inside, can play outside. Bleedy Ray Wilson played about 159 of his 245 snaps in the slot last year for Atlanta. Most of his career, he's been an outside guy. He's been a special teamer. He's a break glass in case of emergency guy, but he's big. He's 6'1", 190. Had 4.53 speed when he was coming out, so he's probably still slow like the rest of the Bucs corners, but he fits the size, and like I said, probably a special teamer who gets released or moved on from once the Bucs reach that point when Carlton Davis and Sean Murphy-Bunting and Richard Sherman are ready to come back.
And you know what? I was wrong, right? Because I believe I said that I think they're going to stand pat at cornerback, but you're right. This is a break glass just in case of emergency type of roster move, and I think he certainly checks a lot of the boxes physically in terms of what the Bucs are looking for. He's got some experience, and you've seen them go to some of those guys, whether it's Pierre Desir, whether it's Rashard Robinson. Obviously, Richard Sherman has got a ton of experience. So they're not looking for young developmental cornerbacks to come in. I think they're going to address cornerback in the draft next year, John, but they want some experienced guys just in case they have another type of injury, a quad, a hamstring, an elbow, a knee. I mean, there's been all sorts of injuries that have befallen these Bucs cornerbacks this year.
Wait, is that him? Was he with the Raiders too?
Yeah.
It must be a preseason game. I just have been playing regular season games with the Titans and Falcons, but these guys have been around a little while.
He has, and I think that the key for Tampa Bay is finding those types of fits. Again, big, slow corners that they can play zone and occasional press man like Todd Bowles wants. And I think it's good movies on the practice squad. Listen, when Carlton Davis and Sean Murphy-Bunting come back, they're going to have to pair some of the cornerbacks from their roster, because I think they've got 6 healthy bodies now at the cornerback position with the addition of Bleedy Ray Wilson. So some of these guys are going to be sent packing, and also when Richard Sherman comes back as well. But in the meantime, they have to just make sure they can get through these next 2 games before the bye week, John, and then you're probably 3 weeks away from maybe getting Sean Murphy-Bunting back or maybe getting Carlton Davis back. I think they get their fingers crossed over there at the Advent Health Training Center that one or both of these guys will be ready to come back maybe for that Washington game or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that, especially when we look ahead at the Bucs, rest of the Bucs schedule, and how we kind of consider the potential return of those guys to the roster to impact the Bucs wins and losses later on in the season. Long lost Glazer, Bleedy Ray Wilson, welcome to the most hyphenated roster in NFL history. Yeah, great point. Tons of hyphens all over the Bucs roster. Hizo says, hope John got enough rest this weekend. My man be putting in crazy work on Pewter Report for the fans. We appreciate it. Thank you, Hizo. Appreciate the shout out. I did get a little bit of rest this weekend. I was slated to sleep more than I did, but that has nothing to do with when I got to bed. It has nothing to do with work. I went to bed fine. I wasn't working. The mind gets you up and you're up producing articles at 5 sometimes. It just happens that way. So,
Demetrius brings up a good point. I pray that the team is looking into the strength conditioning program to see if there's anything they can do to get a handle on these DB soft tissue injuries. Just to be clear, Sean Murphy-Bunting had an elbow injury, so that doesn't apply to him. Mm-hmm. The knee injury.
Sherman's old.
Yeah, Sherman's old. He played 3 games in 12 days. The knee injury to Jamel Dean had nothing to do with conditioning or strength. That was, that's just a ligament issue.
Mm-hmm. And Levante David got bent back over a 300-pound man. So
exactly. So I don't think that's the case. Yeah. I will say though that back in the day, like in the 70s and 80s, there didn't seem to be as many of these soft tissue type of injuries back when you had more pudgy guys, right? I mean, like John Riggins was my favorite player growing up. I was born in Northern Virginia, was a Redskins fan for a minute until I moved to Kansas City, where I became a Chiefs fan. But I just remember when running backs, were, and even Walter Payton, who's I think one of the best running backs of all time, obviously has the record. Emmitt Smith, these were guys that were strong, but they were not as rocked up and chiseled up as some of these guys are now. Mm-hmm. And, there's a lot of doughboys back in the day, quarterbacks, just players at all different types of positions. Yeah. I remember when Joe Jacoby, the left tackle for Washington, when he was 290 pounds, in that was considered massive back then, right?
Right.
And so you didn't have these soft tissue injuries at the same time, though. An ACL injury was sometimes career-ending back then, right? So there's been so many advances made with sports medicine, sports science, but you have to wonder if some of these athletes aren't getting overtrained with some of these injuries, because it just seems like there's more now in the present-day NFL than there has been. And maybe that's just a general assumption on my part, but
could be.
I don't know.
It also could be heightened awareness for players of their injuries and agents of their status, and players having a little more power to take control of their situation and say, what, I'm not 100%. I need to be upfront about that. Where back in the day, it was almost more of a badge of honor, so that could be some of the changing of the times too, and in a good way. Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the example.
What's your name?
Say this though.
Let me see here. Scott Reynolds. Okay, get out there, Scott. You're ready to go.
Yeah, they're a little bit better maybe about monitoring some of that stuff today than they used to be. I will say this too. I think the Bucs, who are one of the biggest advocates of sports science since Bruce Arians arrived, they have actually lost less games starters to injuries than I believe any other team in the league since Arians arrived in 2019. Yeah. So they have had some nagging things, but they have not had any serious things. And what they've done really well, I think, is nip nagging things in the bud very quickly, make sure guys get enough rest so they don't come back and re-injure. I think the Bucs have a very good program for handling that stuff. So they'll be careful with Richard Sherman, and we'll get into when maybe his return could happen here in a little bit. Joel says,
one last thing. Go ahead and read it, John.
Oh, yeah. He said, I also think that lack of padded practice contribute to injuries. Body can't get used to the brutality of playing the game on this level. That probably does for some injuries, but I bet soft tissues, mostly non-contact.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know that applies to the soft tissue type of stuff, but I remember talking to Tony Mayberry, not this past training camp, but 2 years ago, when the Bucs had their kind of like a alumni reunion out there at training camp, and I was talking to Tony about it. And Tony played at about 285 pounds, a 3-time Pro Bowl center for the Buccaneers. I think probably he is the most decorated offensive lineman in Tampa Bay history. Love covering Tony, one of my favorite go-to guys in the locker room. He is probably now 215, 220 pounds at 6'5". Really, a shell of his former self. One of those offensive linemen who's done the right thing and lost all that excess weight, and he'd probably be doing it for health reasons, obviously. But the one thing that he said is he was just shocked at the lack of physicality in training camps in this day and age. And I think there is something to that, because he said the body needs to get coarsened to the brutality of the game. You had to use training camp, 2-a-days, and the physical punishment to get ready for the season. I think a lot of these early season injuries, if you were still back in the day where you had the 2-a-day practices and you had more physicality in training camp, probably wouldn't have these type of injuries. That being said, there is a cost sometimes to the friendly fire that you have in those padded practices. You lose guys to broken hands and knee injuries and stuff during that. So it's so much give and take, and you don't know which way is the right way. Tony's right in his argument, but at the same time, it's just impossible to say, was it better off back then? Because maybe you don't have those injuries now at the beginning of the season, but maybe you have guys in injured reserve because of those injuries in your own training camp.
Yeah, that's right. Stank says, do you think they also want to get Darden snaps in the receiving game as well? I bet it's limited, but I bet it could be part of the situation. If they were to have anybody miss time at receiver, I think they would feel maybe more excited about getting Darden a few reps than they would, especially with Scotty Miller out, than they would Mickens, perhaps. Mickens has seen the field in a handful of snaps over the last couple of games, but really hasn't been a major part of what they're trying to do, and rightfully so. Darden could be, especially if teams, here's another thought, just popped into my head thanks to a good question from Stank. If teams are going to play off the Bucs like the Eagles were, and it was ridiculous, Scott. I mean, watching the tape is absurd. Paul and I were cracking up watching the tape. They're just literally dropping guys out at the snap. That's why the Bucs threw 11 screens in that game.
Yeah, why not?
If you're going to use that, if that's how teams are going to play you, you need post-catch guys, right? More of those guys. Mickens is not really that type of guy, and Darden has potential to be that type of guy. So that could be another reason, is just looking at how some teams have played them and how teams are just so worried about the Bucs beating them with the deep ball right now. They need guys who can make things happen with the ball in their hands.
You're right. And I think, too, there is kind of that new shiny toy aspect, right, with Jalen Darden. I'm sure that Bruce Arians, Byron Leftwich are itching to get him a play or two, a scripted play, right, like an end around on purpose, a wide receiver screen, something like that where he can use that short area quickness to get involved in the game plan. And really, remember, that's something that Scotty Miller doesn't possess. Miller's more vertical speed than he is quick, and he can't even help the team right now with him being an injured reserve with the turf toe injury. But it's something that they didn't see in Jaden Mickens because they didn't feature him in that role. But I think with Darden, he's going to be active anyways. He's going to be up dressed as the punt and kick return guy on Sunday against the Bears. Why not give him a scripted play or two just to use him?
Have something in there at least that makes people think twice. Yeah, I mean,
right.
One thing you lost with Scotty was some of that, big play, stretch the field ability, even to be a decoy, right? Teams have to respect a guy that's that fast, one of the faster guys in the league.
Yeah.
And Darden's not that fast, but he's fast enough that you could still get that element where you weren't gonna get that with Jaden Mickens. You weren't gonna get that with Tyler Johnson.
And I think, John, having Brown, Antonio Brown, and Jalen Darden on the field at the same time, maybe going 4 wide, which is a little rare in Tampa. The Bucs usually will go 4 wide and have a tight end in the slot, usually Gronkowski when he's healthy. But maybe that wrinkle is going 4 wide with a player like Mickens, or not Mickens, Mike Evans and Godwin inside in the slot, and Brown and Darden on the outside. They like to run those 9-8-9 vertical routes and those different types of deep posts, go routes and stuff. So why not use him even as a decoy, as you mentioned, John? Good point.
Right. Yeah, that could be something that they're looking at doing with this, with the addition of Darden. And defensively, like I said, Ray Wilson will keep our eyes on things. The other moves we wanted to let you know about: John Mulchin has been activated from injured reserve, and he is going to be probably moving to the practice squad, I would guess. And then what else was it? Bleedy Ray Wilson.
Elijah Ponder was released in order to make room for Bleedy Ray Wilson.
Right, that's right.
Okay, let's talk real quick about what we think might happen. Long lost Glacier brings up a good point. Is Gronk back this week? The Chicago Edge is no joke. Even as Tristan Wirfs found out, Khalil Mack is still really good, right?
Shocker.
Shocker. The All-Pro and the Pro Bowler. lit up Tristan Wirfs for his only NFL sack. Wirfs has only given up 1 sack in, let's do the math, 20 games last year, 6 games, in 26 games, only allowed 1 sack. That's pretty good, right? That's special.
Yeah.
So he gets a rematch game against Khalil Mack this week when Chicago comes to town. And yes, I think that there is a chance Rob Gronkowski comes back. Bruce Arians said that there was a couple of guys that were close to returning. Had the Eagles game, but on a Sunday, John, one of those guys is Antoine Winfield Jr., which I believe he's going to be green lighted this week. He'll be out of practice. And then we'll see if Gronkowski is that other guy. We'll see if he is close enough to practice and get on the field and how he fares.
Yeah, for sure. I think Gronkowski and Winfield will be back. Long Lost Glazer's right. Chicago's pass rush is the real deal. I don't see many aspects about this game being super challenging for the Bucs on paper. Obviously, this is a team that we'll talk about in a second, has done a lot to make things difficult for themselves this season. But if they take care of business offensively, Chicago is really struggling, and Justin Fields is holding the ball. He held the ball 3.29 seconds against Green Bay, Scott. That is big. That's like a full second longer on average than Brady's holding it this season.
Right.
Just bonker stuff. That's the one thing with him. He can make things happen, but he's holding the ball a long time.
That's even longer than what they just saw in Philadelphia, right, with Jalen Hurts.
Right.
And
Hurts was around 2.9.
Yeah, and so what that tells you is he doesn't fully understand where all of his options are, right? And if one option, if the primary read is covered, he's got a very hard time finding where number 2 is and then processing the information. Number 1 is covered. Is my 2 a viable option given the defense that I looked at pre-snap and then am experienced now after the snap, right?
Right.
And then if that's not covered, where's number 3? Right. And then the same thought process again. Primary's gone. 2, I'm not sure about. Let me find out where number 3 is. Maybe it's a check down. And by that time, it's just,
Yeah, it's a long time coming for him. And we'll he's typical rookie stuff, but the Bucs will face him and during that time where he's not really come out of it yet. And so they need to take advantage of that opportunity, obviously. We'll talk more about that matchup specifically as we get into later parts of the week, Wednesday and Thursday. But let's just look at the NFC right now, Scott. I've got a couple questions for you as we look at the NFC. To me, there are 4 other teams outside of the Bucs that I believe are just clear-cut competitors right now for the Bucs. Yeah. They're Super Bowl title, the way they look right now, Super Bowl title competitors. And it's the 4 teams around them on this list that you've put up here. The Arizona Cardinals at 6-0 have shocked me. I never expected them to be undefeated at this point. They've actually beaten some good teams, so I can't even fall back on that one. I can't believe the level of consistency they're playing with on both sides of the ball. The defense, what Vance Joseph has gotten out of them, extremely impressive. People had Kingsbury fired before the season started. Now he's 6-0, and they should be 7-0 after they beat the Texans.
He didn't even coach on Sunday. How about that?
Yeah, that's right. So the Rams at 5-1, I think they're still coming together on both sides of the ball, sort of similar to the Bucs. Kind of maybe a little bit further ahead of where the Bucs were at this point last year, but kind of like that. I think there's some similarities maybe between those two things. So we'll see how quickly it comes together in LA. Obviously the Bucs, the Cowboys, since they've lost, have won 5 straight since they lost to Tampa Bay in week 1. I don't know what to take from that week 1 game, if any. The Cowboys have obviously gotten better, I think, since that point. The Bucs probably have 2. Obviously the Bucs had 4 turnovers in that game. They only have 6 turnovers on the season. So 4 in that game, and they still ended up winning along with all the penalties and lots of self-inflicted stuff, and still end up winning that game. A couple big drops in that game. I mean, there was so many issues, and they still won over what I believe is right now probably a top 5 team in the NFL in Dallas. And Green Bay and a 5-1 too. So those 5 teams,
a quality win on week 1. Right. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and those 5 teams to me, Scott, are like clear cut. I think they all look legit to me. I'm usually way slower to say that, but I think they all look legit, and they look head and shoulders above the rest of the conference, in my opinion.
I agree. The interesting thing about this list is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we'll find out in 2 weeks on Halloween, right? If they can go down to New Orleans and beat the Saints, they will have a clear lead in the NFC South title. So much so, I'm not going to say it's over. There's still a lot of football left to be played. But if the Buccaneers are healthy, like reasonably healthy, by the end of the season, they should win the division by a couple of games, in my opinion. In other words, I think that if they can beat the Saints in New Orleans, they'll put a stranglehold on the NFC South that they're not going to let go of.
Right.
As long as their key players stay healthy, right? If you lose Tom Brady, if you lose Vita Vea, Devin White, then things maybe change. But I think that's the case. The Dallas Cowboys look like they're going to do the same in the NFC East. They look like the clear frontrunner in that division right now with how well they're playing. Same can be said of the Packers, although the Vikings, that was an impressive overtime win against Carolina. And I think Carolina is a good team, not a great team, but you can see they're 3-3. Vikings are 3-3 also. The Bears are 3-3. I think Tampa Bay will deal them a loss this week, so they'll be 3-4. But then the other thing, John, is the Cardinals and the Rams, right? They've played each other once. The Cardinals dealt the Rams their only loss. They'll have a rematch. And so I think there'll be some attrition in that division because the 49ers, I think, are good enough to beat either team. We'll see if they can actually pull it off, but I don't think the 49ers are a bad team. Depends on how their quarterback play goes, obviously, but I think that they're not as downtrodden maybe as their 2-4 record. And then, of course, the Seahawks. Losing Russell Wilson certainly didn't help matters. But I think that there'll be a little bit of attrition in the NFC West, and that's going to either knock the Rams down a little bit or maybe knock the Cardinals from the unbeaten ranks. We'll have to see.
Yeah, the Cardinals right now, that's we're getting to that point where it's, okay, we start looking, what our team's going to finish the year at, and obviously we're way too far out, so we're obviously projecting some here, but that's part of the fun of it, right?
Yeah.
Cardinals' schedule is really not super difficult. I mean, the Texans, then they play the Packers. That'll be a tough one. 49ers, I'm not sure what to think right now. I know that they just played them tough, but I don't know if they have the horses on defense to hold up if Trey Lance isn't going to just make a huge, weird, crazy middle of the season leap. And Jimmy's not that guy.
Right.
Panthers, I think they're frauds, to be honest. I said that when they were 3-0. I said, we'll see. Let's see. Now they've lost 3 in a row, and not all those have been to great teams either. I mean, it's a team that they lost to the Eagles. I mean, they're struggling right now. I don't think they feel like they have the answer at quarterback that they did in week 3. Seahawks, that'll be probably without Geno or with Geno and probably without Russell Wilson, I would say. But it'll be close maybe. If Wilson's the healer that they believe he is, maybe he will be back for that game.
Yeah.
Then the bye week, then the Bears. That should be a win for Arizona. The Rams is a tough one. Lions should be a win. Colts should be a win. The Cowboys, and then Seattle again, if Russ is back or even playing, or if Seattle's even in it at week 18, we'll see. But, the Cardinals probably don't finish worse than 14-3 at this point.
Right.
I mean, that would be a low-end estimate, I think, for them. And they've got a good chance to finish better than that unless an injury happens, obviously. And like I said, you've just got clear-cut across the NFC really good teams. So,
it's
the Packers,
very top-heavy. Yeah.
They're going to probably win out their division. The Cowboys are probably not going to lose a game in their division.
Correct.
So, yeah, the Bucs, all of a sudden, they might have one of the tougher divisions. The Saints are going to scrap and always give the Bucs a challenge.
Sure.
There are issues with the Saints, though, that I'll touch on really quickly, Scott. I mentioned this before. They are 93% in the red zone right now. I just am not sure that's going to continue. I mean, I know it's not. That's the record of all time was set last year by Green Bay, and I think they were just over 70% in the red zone. That was unthinkable a couple of years ago, and Green Bay was unbelievable last year in the red zone. There's just a way the Saints are, and Saints aren't even a high-scoring team. I think I mentioned it going into week 6. They were 27th in terms of possessions that ended in a score. They were ranked 27th in the NFL.
Sure.
So they aren't even scoring very often, but every single time they get in position, except for once, they've scored a touchdown in the red zone this year. So they are just operating at this crazy efficiency in the red zone that probably is not going to last to that degree. So some regression is due there, and we're talking about a bottom-ranked passing attack. The
other thing, too, is just the Jameis Winston factor. We've seen in spot duty how he's done against his former team, the Buccaneers, right? He came in relief in that 38-3 blowout and completed a pass for a first down, and then he did a couple of kneels and got the W that he so deliciously ate after beating Tampa Bay on Sunday Night Football, and then came in on a trick gimmick play and threw a touchdown pass to Trayvon Smith in New Orleans. And okay, great, but they lost that game. How is Jameis Winston going to fare as the wire-to-wire starter against his former team? We've seen Jameis be a little too amped up in some of those types of big games, and it leads to turnovers. And so,
but will the Saints even let him do that? I mean, The only time they even let him throw the ball down the field is when they have a schemed open, wide open deep shot that he has to hit. And sure, he can hit those. Lots of people can. But they have not given him any of the reins yet. And when they do, I think we all believe what will happen is not good. And I think the Saints believe that. Otherwise, they would have done it. And so what happens when they get into a team that they have to keep pace with offensively? I don't know. Oddly enough, the Bucs should be one of those teams, but haven't really been against the Saints in most of the meetings. So there's still I have a ton of interest in that game still. By the way, Michael Thomas reported today from Ian Rappaport, he's probably not going to be back in time for the first matchup against the Saints. He's still multiple weeks away, it sounds like. So maybe the second time the two teams meet, but probably not going to happen in week 8. So I don't think the Saints are in it for me right now. They're the one team that's strong enough on defense, strong enough on the O-line, strong enough in the run game that I could see them making a wild card spot. But to me, those 5 teams are just clearly ahead of the rest. And my question to you becomes, Scott, where do you right now, not saying at the end of the season, but right now, where do you think the Bucs are playing relative to, if we agree that those 5 teams are ahead of everybody else in the NFC, where do you think the Bucs are playing relative to those other 4?
I'm still concerned about the penalties in Tampa Bay because I still believe that the only team that can truly beat the Buccaneers is themselves with the self-inflicted wounds. The Rams, from a matchup standpoint, John, they concern me in the playoffs. I think that they're a team that, from a matchup standpoint, I'm just not crazy about because their offensive line in 2 games, going back to the one in 2020, that 27-24 win in Tampa on Monday Night Football.
It's true. Yeah.
They didn't allow a sack in that game. They only allowed 1 sack to Will Golston, kind of in garbage time. Mm-hmm. And I just think that those tackles with Whitworth and Havenstein, both of those tackles just do a very incredible job against the Bucs pass rushers. And so, and not just that, Sean McVay is not going to allow his quarterbacks to get hit. You're going to see the quick game, the quick smoke routes, the types of plays that are going to be the wide receiver screens and all of that. So I'm just of the opinion that I don't think that you're going to see the Rams not give the Buccaneers a fit. I think that's
so you're looking at it from the matchup perspective, and you're saying the worst matchup for the Bucs is the Rams out of the teams that are left.
Yes, and maybe the Cardinals too. I just think that defense is for real, and they can get after the quarterback. There's no doubt about it. You've got a mobile quarterback that I look at Jalen Hurts, and it's not even so much the scrambling. It's not even the fear that he's going to break off a 20-25-yard run or something. It's just inside the red zone. I thought the Buccaneers failed in trying to defend against Jalen Hurts, and I think that Chicago is going to look at this and say, if we can get down to the red zone, we have a chance against the Bucs defense because, whether it's gap integrity, maintaining the edge down there, I think they're susceptible to the quarterback run game, and that's an area that Justin Fields really has, that dual threat ability, and I believe that that's what could make this game close. If the Buccaneers beat themselves with penalties, if they allow some big plays to get into the red zone for the Bears, I think the Bears can put some touchdowns on the board as opposed to field goals because of that rushing element. And then Kyler Murray, we know he can run and pass, and he is probably the best dual threat quarterback right now, not named Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think all 4 of those teams are a little bit ahead of the Packers right now. Just defensively, I don't know if I'm ready to trust Green Bay. They can't rush the passer that well.
Yeah,
they're okay, but they're getting better. But
Green Bay doesn't scare me.
Yeah, and Tampa Bay's shown they know how to move the ball against Green Bay, do some good things against Green Bay. I think that stays. I think that they, again, offensively, if Tampa Bay's healthy, then I'm not as worried about Dallas as I am the unknown of Arizona. I haven't seen this version of Arizona match up with the Bucs, so there's the unknown factor and element there. And the scramble ability of Kyler Murray. I mean, the guy's holding the ball a ton and inviting a ton of pressure this year, but it's not affecting them. And he is athletic enough that might continue. And so that gets scary too. I think the Rams are tough, but I actually feel better about the Bucs against the Rams, even though they lost, based on how the offense moved the football and how much the Rams defense has struggled this year compared to last year. I think if it goes to a shootout and they get another shot at it, I think that they can hang with the Rams a little bit.
I'm not saying Tampa Bay can't beat the Rams, but the other thing too
it's
is
a tough matchup.
It's a tough matchup, and the Buccaneers did have the benefit, and I talked with Rick Stroud about this on WDAE over the weekend on the Insider Show. Last year, when Tampa Bay was winning more road games, more games away from Raymond James Stadium than they were during the regular season even. Let's not forget that the Bucs had 3 playoff games that were on the road. There wasn't hardly any crowds. I mean, you had 7,000, 10,000 fans in the stands in some of those stadiums, not 70,000, right? And that makes a big difference. And you saw the crowd noise and how that amped up the Rams and certainly didn't help the Buccaneers when they went out there to SoFi Stadium and lost in Los Angeles. So I think this year more so than ever, home field advantage in the playoffs is going to be critical. It is going to play more of a role than it did last year. And I think even in the Super Bowl, John, there were more Buccaneer fans there than Chiefs fans. Right. Even though there's just 25,000. We were there. We were in the press box. It made a difference. You heard the roar of the crowd for the Buccaneers, double that of what it was for the Chiefs.
And the Bucs have been a different team at home. I don't know.
Yes.
I don't really – the numbers show lately, at least over the last couple of years at least, that the home-away thing is more of a myth. It's actually, I think home teams have a losing record cumulatively over the last couple of years. COVID year might throw a wrench in that and take away something. But overall, I don't know that it's a huge concern. But I think psychologically for the Bucs, there seems to be something to it right now. Again, you know me, I hate things that I can't really analyze. I don't know if that makes any sense. But it seems to be the case. It seems to be holding true for them. They seem like a different team at home. Afternoon games, things like that seem to be making a difference and having an effect on the Bucs. So we'll see kind of what happens as that part of it proceeds. But it's something to keep in mind.
You know what, too? You're right, John. Here's one thing that you can digest. If you look at the scoring, right, for the Buccaneers home and away this year, and again, they were better last year on the road. They won more games on the road than they did at home, but 31 points in the season opener against Dallas at home, 48 points the next week at home against the Falcons. In that loss on the road to Los Angeles to the Rams, only put up 24 points, only put up 19 points the next week in a win at New England. Come home, what's the number again? 45 at home against the Dolphins. Then you go on the road to the Eagles on Thursday night, 28 points. The Buccaneers have had 31 points or more in every home game this year, and they have yet to score 30 points or more in any of the away games. So they've had some dominant wins at home, but they've had some very close wins on the road.
In the first couple away games, it was really self-inflicted stuff. It wasn't necessarily like, man, what is this team doing? It was just like, come on, like if you catch this ball, if AB, the Patriots.
That's right,
So there's a lot of that.
And you know what, John? Listen, I mean, in hindsight, Bruce Arians should have sent Ryan Suckup out there for a field goal, because I would have hit not just the over-under on my bookie for that Thursday night game, but I also would have covered the point spread. I don't know what the Eagles were doing. Going for 2, that ruined everything. I had the Bucs at -7, and those sons of bitches go out there and make it a 6-point margin. It's like, it's so terrible.
Hey, MyBookie's a pretty good place to go when you want to win some money, though, Scott. And this past weekend, how did you fare a little bit over at MyBookie?
I fared quite well. I did very well in college. I won, I think, $26 in college and about $15 in the pros. So I did very well when it came to MyBookie. That's the place to go when you're looking for for any types of bets. They've got an amazing special right now going on that you can double your deposit up to $1,000. And you can do that at mybookie.ag. Use the promo code Pewter and save up to $1,000 on your first deposit bonus.
Yeah, that's great stuff with MyBookie, as it always seems to be, and that's the place to win yourself some money for sure. All right, we've talked about the NFC. Let's just bring the AFC into it quickly before we look at the rest of the Bucs schedule. We came into the year fully believing the AFC was going to be better than the NFC this year. I say that as a guy who I was kind of a believer in the Cowboys. I had them winning that division with ease. Some people were going with Washington. I did not think that was going to be the case.
I didn't either,
Yeah, so I was kind of a believer in Dallas, and they've still kind of surprised me with how good they've been. And I think that Arizona has completely shocked me. So I had basically 2 contenders while the Rams and Packers have been, and Bucs have been exactly what I expected.
Right.
There's 5 contenders to me there in the NFC. With the Browns and their struggles, they're still a good football team. They'll be tough for everybody. Maybe they're the 10th best team in the league, but I don't see them necessarily in the picture right now. I think Baker Mayfield's injury, and he's not as good. If you look at the top 9 teams in the NFL, and I'm talking about the 5 teams we just talked about, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Bills, and the Ravens, they're all quarterbacked by a monster, by an elite player. I don't know if Baker's in that conversation. Like, he might be okay. He's good, but the injury... Plus, I don't think he's on that level.
I don't think he's that good. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's that good, though. I just think that there's a lot of hype around him, and he just is not special to me, right? I mean, he's had moments where he could have been, right? That even in that Week 1 Kansas City game, right? I mean, he had an opportunity, threw a pick. I mean, those are the moments we're looking for and waiting for, and he didn't do it. So you look at the Bills, I think they're probably the best team, them and the Ravens. Yeah. The Bills are 4-1. Ravens are 5-1. The Ravens have been very impressive, and I think that's what Baltimore's been waiting for, is for Lamar Jackson to become that passer. We've seen them roll up the wins and roll up the records and everything during the regular season, and you get to the postseason, and Lamar Jackson can't throw the ball, and that's what's been the Achilles heel for Baltimore. I mean, he passed for over 400 yards, completing 85% of his passes, some ridiculous stat like that.
It's crazy how much better he's gotten this year. Yeah, and he's always going to be the most athletic player. Like, I don't think anybody in the league will ever top him in terms of athleticism. So it just makes it so interesting,
right? If you look at the divisions really quickly, the Bills are 4-1. The next best team in the East are the 2-4 Patriots. The AFC East has always been the AFC East. It's been the Patriots on top. Now it's just the Bills, and you got 3 also rans in New England. You got the Jets at 1-4, the Dolphins at 1-5.
Those 2 teams are basically out of it already. The Jets and Dolphins.
They are.
I mean, the Bills have already the Bills are going to win the division.
Yes.
We'll see in the AFC North. The AFC South, the same thing. The Titans are going to win the division. I mean,
the AFC South. I mean, the Titans are 3-2 right now, and again, the Colts at 2-4.
Titans
the
probably
Texans
lose
and Jaguars
at
at 1-5.
So, right.
Yeah,
but the Titans aren't a fact. Nobody in the South is a factor.
Correct.
So who cares who wins?
Nobody is. It's really Chiefs, 2 divisions.
Chiefs, Chargers, Bills, and Ravens.
The interesting thing about the AFC West is the bottom feeder teams, Denver and Kansas City, are 3-3, right? That's the worst record in the West is a 500 record right now. Both the Chargers and Raiders are 4-2. Same thing with the North. We talked about those 2 lopsided divisions, the East and the South. The same thing in the North. You got the Ravens on top at 5-1, the Bengals at 4-2. Cleveland's been the surprise disappointment at 3-3, along with the Steelers at 3-3. So again, the bottom place teams are 3-3. They're at 500 right now. So it's kind of an interesting AFC picture, and not nearly as good as I thought it would be.
And are the Chargers ready? They're a nice team. They're taking a nice step.
That was a big step back, though.
They took a big step back. They got whooped. Herbert's very good. Is the defense ready? Is the O-line ready? I think there's legit questions about that with the Chargers. They might be a year away still. But very impressive team, still going to be in contention, I think, for the West, as long as the Chiefs' defense continues to be just atrocious.
I think this is a good statement right here. Baker is the 2 of the North. And I was not a big Tua.
But
I just don't see Tua making it in the NFL. Not to the star level. No.
I don't know. We'll see. Greg, I'd love to see a Baltimore versus Tampa Super Bowl strength versus strength, rush attack versus run defense. Here's the X factor, though. Baltimore's rush attack isn't just a rush attack. It's also Lamar scrambles, which doesn't have anything to do with your defensive scheme.
That's true.
And why I don't want to see that at all, because Lamar's going to win a Super Bowl before he's done. I believe that strongly. Is it this year? I don't know. We'll see. But he's just such a unique player. It's so hard to prepare the way you do for every other team in the league, and then have a player like him changes all the other things that you do. And then when he's also complete and big time throws, tight window passing, he's a very unique player. And I think the fact that he's gotten better this year and isn't going to beat himself as much now is pretty scary for other teams. So we'll see if he can maintain it. I think right now, if you're ranking everybody in the NFL, Scott, to me, I think Tampa Bay's 3rd or 4th right now. And they have the ability to be 1st for sure. If they can play a little bit better.
They do.
Penalties are a problem. Drops are a problem. Tom Brady's lost more production to drops than
the only team that beats the Bucs is the Buccaneers.
And it's especially the moments they've done it in, Scott.
Yes.
Like the Brady has lost touchdowns, huge gains. There's been 5 or 6 drops on third down in other teams' territory. It's those moments that are holding them back. I mean, they could be the top scoring team in the league if they weren't doing that themselves. I think Paul wrote an article this morning at pewterreport.com that showed Brady's lost more value in production, meaning stronger at possibilities at touchdowns and points and things like that because of drops this season than any other quarterback in the league. And it's not even close right now. And I think that's very indicative of where the team is at. Yet they're still 5-1, because
John,
despite all
don't look now, but the Bucs, their offense just got better the last couple weeks because it's got more balance now, right? You've got a guy in Leonard who's no longer like the butt of jokes, right? He's now known for making great plays like touchdowns and not blowing assignments and dropping passes. To his credit, he has really become another weapon, right? It's like, the obvious usual suspects, right? I mean, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski. And then when you add him into the mix, and then look, we forgot about O.J. Howard. Look what O.J. did, right?
Right.
They're kind of stepping up in that role that maybe Scotty Miller had last year, making some of those big plays. The catch against the Raiders for a touchdown right before halftime. Obviously the catch before halftime against the Packers. Those are those special plays that you need from some of those fill-in guys. And I think Leonard Fournette has really been one of those big-time fill-in guys. Those 2 touchdowns against the Eagles, those were big, right? I mean, he's really playing well right now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question. He's playing great. And I'm actually going to write about him this week for Peter over at pewterreport.com. I haven't decided yet. I think I'm going to write a little bit about him, at least in Bucs Briefing. He's going to be one of my 7 points in Bucs Briefing. And he might have some more content coming on him too, depending on the quotes we get this week. He's on my radar. It's for like a little bit of a feature piece if we get him and stuff, because he's had some good things to say too. So it's fun. I think that we can turn our attention maybe in a second and look at the Bucs' upcoming schedule. And we'll obviously have our Leonard segment on Wednesday, as we always do, of course. And it'll be good things for sure this week. But I think, even as we rotate attention and look at this Bucs schedule, I want to make sure people know that Spotify Green Room is a place that you can jump in and you can talk and get in depth about all of these things. So no matter what your team is, I see some Chiefs fans in the chat, and I know Bucs fans are kind of taking care of them right now, doing what they got to do. And that's, that's all good, man. We get the tension in the group chat. I love it. And you Spotify Green Room, you can literally all grab the mic and go at each other. And so you can talk music, sports, culture, all of it, download it on the App Store, get it on Google Play, follow Pewter Report, get the notifications when Pewter Report goes live over on Spotify Green Room, and we'll have some in-depth stuff going on over there as the season progresses. So make sure you give us a follow on that platform, of course. Scott, let's look at the Bucs' remaining schedule here, because I think that there's some games here that, here's the good part, Scott. Even though we go say in the same breath the NFC is tougher than we thought it was going to be going into the year, the Bucs to get to the Super Bowl, we'll see what happens with injuries with everybody, but it feels like the path is going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of good, and we haven't, the Saints, like I said, regardless of whether they're good or not, if they're in the playoff mix and they're a wild card team or whatever it might be, they're just still going to be a tough challenge for the Bucs. I think as long as Dennis Allen's there and Sean Payton's there, they know how to draw things up. They're not going to get blown out. They're going to be one of those spoiler type teams this year, I think. So challenges in the NFC for sure. But I don't think the rest of this schedule is very difficult. If they finish worse than 14-3, I think it's a disappointment. I'll say, it's a mild disappointment, but you get to 12 and whatever 5, or I think you start getting into that's a really disappointing season. Barring injuries at certain positions, obviously.
Well, and you're right, especially because what that might cost you is a home playoff game, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's if you win the division, you get a home playoff game, and I think Tampa Bay is going to do that. But I'm not saying Tampa Bay has to have home field advantage. Maybe the Cardinals finish with a win more. But you're right. I predicted 13-4 originally, and we'll see how this plays out. Unfortunately, whether it's Tony Dungy as coach, John Gruden as coach, Bruce Arians as coach, you can pick whichever Bucs coach you want. There's been a disappointing loss in every season. There was one last year in Chicago, right? They had no business losing to the Bears on Thursday night, 20-19. That's self-inflicted wounds. And are the Buccaneers going to be playing perfect football to where they're going to be impenetrable here throughout. And listen, there's no shame in losing to the Rams, in my opinion. The Rams are a damn good football team that was on the road against a team that has only lost to the undefeated team in the league, right? The Cardinals. So I don't want to say that's a quality loss, but it's a quality loss. Where are the other losses on this schedule? I mean, the Buffalo game is going to be probably the most challenging. I think Buffalo is probably the team where you could say if the Bucs are going to lose, that would be one of them. Mm-hmm. Can the Bucs run the table in the NFC South? Now, they beat the Saints last year in the playoffs in New Orleans, but they had lost 5 straight to New Orleans. Dennis Allen has this team's number, right? That defense. The Saints have lost a lot of personnel from last year. We'll see if that makes a difference in these upcoming games, the next of which, and if you're looking at the schedule on the screen here on our YouTube channel, the red games are the home games, the pewter games are the road games, and of course the Bucs have a bye week in the middle of the season, which is going to be good. They'll get some key players back from injuries. But they beat a Washington football team that wasn't very good last year, John. What was Washington's record? 7-9?
Yeah.
Okay, 7-9. They barely beat that team with Taylor Heineke at quarterback on the road. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say that the Buccaneers are a juggernaut that they will run the table. Can they? Yeah, I think they can, as long as they are playing their A game. Because when the Bucs bring their A game to the table with the talent that they have, and as they get healthier, they will be the best team in football. The times where they will not win games, it might happen once, it might happen twice, it might happen 3 times down the stretch, will be the games where they beat themselves.
Right. No, I completely agree. By the way, if you can hear some pounding, it's because they are building a house right next door to ours, right in our line.
You're popular, John. You're a magnet for people, and they want to be around you.
They've been building this whole community where we are, and now they're building the house right next to us. Has been just a lot that they've barely done any work on, and they built houses all around that, but the house right next to us, there's been just basically the lot there. And now they're finally starting the building process over there, and you can hear them. Of course, they're in earnest during this podcast time.
Well, I think the thing to do, John, is to go, bring a couple Celsiuses over there to them.
I should
just say, hey guys, take a break for an hour. We're doing a podcast now. Enjoy a Celsius, and you can start rebuilding the house at 5:00 p.m. Eastern.
That's right. All right, let's go through this Bucs schedule, and maybe we'll pick kind of what we think is going to happen as the season kind of progresses right now for Tampa Bay. Chicago, to me, the way I see it is that game has to be a win. I mean, at home, Chicago's just not finding the answers offensively. I think, to me, you're probably going to need a team that's stronger defensively than Chicago is, or finding some level of answer offensively to finish this thing out. In fact, that's a story as you look across the remaining Bucs schedule. Opposing offenses just don't really have it that they're facing right now. Chicago's struggling. Chicago and Saints, I said, are the 2 bottom-ranked passing attacks in the league right now in terms of passing yards per game or overall passing yards. That's good news for the Bucs for sure. Washington is a team that's really struggling. They may have a quarterback change. Right, they're in disarray. That defense is honestly in the bottom. I know they were good last year, but they are a train wreck right now.
Speaking of train wrecks, John,
a bust. Like
the New York Giants the next week, right?
Oh my gosh,
Joe
Judge
experiment
might not be there by then.
It's probably coming to a quick end.
Carson Wentz is playing a little bit better in Indy.
Yeah,
that I could see them being like it's getting back to being like an 8-8 team. I think they're decently well coached. That's a little bit of a scary one, maybe. Mm-hmm. Atlanta will be again. They'll be okay.
They play the Bucs tough in Atlanta. They do, right? I mean, a bad Falcons team was up 17-0 last year. Mm-hmm. The writing was on the wall. They'd already fired. Dan Quinn, Raheem Morris. The writing was on the wall for him too. The interim head coach. They really had nothing to play for, but they went out there and put 17 points up and took a big lead. It took 31 points in the second half for the Bucs to rally for a 31-27 win. So I think that's I think that's always a bit of a scare. Again, the Bucs are playing Bucs football. They're going to win against these lesser teams. It's just can they put the nail in the coffin? We've seen the Buccaneers allow the Cowboys back into that Week 1 game. We saw the Buccaneers allow the Falcons to tighten the game to 27-24, 28-23, whatever it was, 28-25. we saw a 28-7 lead against the Eagles, John, evaporate, and they ended up winning by 6 points. So again, it's about the Buccaneers and how well they play. That there are some games that will be a little challenging. I'm curious to sell. I wish we could fast forward to the Saints game in Halloween in New Orleans. I think that'll be a big barometer to see how this team plays on the road. Because again, if they don't play well on the road and they lose that game, then you start talking about the Colts game being more of an issue because maybe they're not playing well on the road this year. Maybe that's kind of the team's hiccup, is not playing well on the road. And then that Carolina game, right? You've got two games. The Carolina game, which I believe is the day before Christmas. Is that right?
That sounds about right. Yeah,
I think Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve for those games. I believe that's the case. So you've got Carolina.
And day after Christmas. Yeah.
Day after Christmas. Okay, so that means you're going to be spending Christmas on the road in Carolina, right? Christmas night, in Carolina, waiting to play the game the day after Christmas. Same thing with the Jets. You're playing in New York. You're going to be in New York in your hotel on New Year's Eve. On New Year's, and then playing that game the day afterwards. So just the fact that those are around the holiday season, these guys are human beings. They've got families. They've got kids, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be a distraction, but you never know. I always like the team's chances when the calendar hits and you've got, whether it's around Christmas Eve or the day after Christmas or whatever, and the same with New Year's. I like when those games are in Tampa, just for that reason.
Right. I think so too. I think that the way that I see this schedule, yes, there are a few potential mild challenges along the way, but they shouldn't lose more than 2 games the rest of the year. They just shouldn't. I think those 2 losses will be – I think the Saints going into the bye week is one of those games that just causes us to pull our hair out. Like the Saints are not as good as the Bucs. I don't think it's because of Jameis. I know people are kind of Bucs fans are not worried, but
I'm telling you,
dread that
Dennis
obviously.
Allen. I think it's the defensive scheme against Byron Leftwich and Bruce Arians.
And the way the Bucs have played on the road doesn't give me as much confidence. I think they'll figure that part out by the end of the season, by the way. But I think that game going into the bye is one that catches them slipping a little bit.
It could.
I don't think that's a bad loss, though, like the Bears last year.
Correct.
I know the Bears made the playoffs last year, but they were a terrible team. I don't think the Saints are terrible like the Bears were last year.
Well, John, we have to remember, too, that the Bucs put up 30 points in New Orleans last year. They won 30-20 that game, but it was takeaways by the Bucs defense that really set up some short fields, right? That Sean Murphy bunting interception into the New Orleans red zone, right? That set up a very short field. You had the interception by Devin White later in the game that set the Bucs up with a prime scoring opportunity on the Saints side of the field. The same thing with that big key forced fumble by Antoine Winfield Jr. and then the scoop and return, not to the end zone, but into the red zone by Devin White. Those were 3 short fields that the Bucs had to put up those points. I think it's a different story when you're asking your offense to go 80 yards against the Dennis Allen defense, right, than it is to go 20 or 30 yards because of a short field, momentum changing plays on defense. And I think that if they're going to beat New Orleans in 2 weeks, they're going to have more takeaways on defense and kind of replicate that performance, just because Dennis Allen knows this Bruce Arians offense and has a track record stopping it.
Right, for sure. I think that is just going to be a tough matchup for them. I think they solve it by the end of the season. I think the Bucs are playing good football by the end of the year. And I think that the Bills are the other one. I think the Bills just right now are better. We'll see. I think that game could be really like one of the best games of the year, though. I don't think
no doubt.
Like the Saints, if they lose the Saints, that could be like a maddening game that drives everybody crazy. I think both teams could come out of the Bills game like, wow, like this was fun and this could be the Super Bowl. Like I think that's how teams may feel, or we may feel about it when that one's over, and we'll see kind of who wins. But I think the rest of them are wins for the Bucs. I really do. I think
should be.
I think this is a team that finishes 14-3, and we'll see if that's enough for the 1 seed, Scott. But I think that's what their hope is, that's enough for the 1 seed based on Arizona and the Rams playing in a tougher division.
And you know what? The Buccaneers have won the NFC South 3 times. And keep in mind, they didn't win it last year, right? They won a Super Bowl, but the Saints won the NFC South. They've won it 3 times. Those were under John Gruden in 2002, 2005, 2007. But in none of those years did they run the table and have an undefeated record? Not even in the Super Bowl year. Remember, they opened the season with a home loss to the Saints that year. And I believe they lost in New Orleans that year as well. 2 of those 4 losses in Gruden's 12-4 season in 2002 were in the NFC South. So the Bucs have never run the table in the NFC South before. They've also, and I answered this question in today's Bucs Monday mailbag, they've never had a undefeated home schedule before. They've won all of their games. The closest they came, I believe, was in, I think, 99. They were 7-1 under Tony Dungy. So they've never had a year where they've gone 8-0 at home. And matter of fact, under Bruce Arians, they still have a losing record, I think, at home, or maybe it's close to 500 now. But the first year, I believe they won 3 home games, and they were 5-3 on the road. Last year, they had a better road record than they did at home. So they're still trying to make up ground and create that home field advantage now in year 3 under Bruce Arians. So far, so good. 3-0 right now, John. Should be 4-0 by the time we do our post-game podcast after the Bucs-Bears game.
Yeah, it should be. It'd be interesting if they win both going into the bye. I mean, we will probably, the talk will pick up a little bit on 1 seed, and we'll talk about those possibilities, because they'll be in a really good position, I think, if that's the case. Obviously playing really confident football. When you feel like you've solved the Saints a little bit, especially the Bucs offense solved the Saints a little bit, and aren't as dependent on the Saints' mistakes to win like it maybe happened in the playoffs, I think that you feel really confident going into the bye. Plus then the opportunity to get healthy. That's the other part about playing the Saints. Bucs are probably going to be without maybe their 3 best corners. I mean, Dean's playing well, and then we'll see if anything happens.
You including Richard Sherman in your
I don't know
list
how
of top 3 corners?
I don't know how I feel about that yet. I think athletically might be zapped, but I don't think athleticism is as important in the Bucs scheme as other schemes. So maybe he could be. I don't know. But right now, Dean's better for sure. So 3 of their top 4 or whatever. We'll see. Cockrell's good too, but he might be a little bit scheme dependent and role dependent, I think, more so than the other guys. So, I think that makes it a challenge too for now. That how quickly can they get healthy on the other side of it? Like I said, they're not facing vaunted passing attacks, but I like where they're at right now. I would like it a lot more if they could clean up a couple things on offense. I know defense is going to struggle. I think when everybody's healthy, they'll be a solid defense, not a great one probably, but a solid defense. Hopefully that's enough. Green Bay's defense isn't great. Dallas's defense isn't great. The Rams defense has taken a big step back from last year. Might find their way, but I'm not counting on it. The safety play is just worse than it was last year. We'll see. They could definitely bounce back still. There's still good things happening there for sure. The Cardinals defense is good, but will it last? They don't have as much talent as some of the teams I just mentioned. And so I just wonder if that catches up with them. So it's way more important that the Bucs get elite on offense than it is that they get elite on defense from where they're at now, or even like very good on defense to me.
They just need to get healthy on defense, John. That's the thing.
But this can be the best offense in the NFL, and probably would be had they not let opportunities slip them by through the first 6 weeks.
Sure.
And now if they can do that and cut those things out, nobody's going to care. They're 5-1. They obviously won the games, but how you that's why we always say, like, yes, a win's a win for that team, but if we're projecting ahead, how you win is important. And the Bucs haven't won the way they should against teams like the Patriots and the Eagles, where they could have blown those teams out and been far better than those teams, and they didn't. And now that matters moving forward. If they can correct those things and take care of some of the things that hurt them, like drops and penalties and a lack of efficiency in certain areas, they'll be in the conversation and in the rankings statistically and every other place for the best offense in the NFL. That's where they need to be. If their offense can be that good, their defense just being okay will be enough.
I agree.
That's where it matters, I think, by the end.
The next update, to answer your question, is tomorrow. Bruce Arians will be addressing the media. The players have had the time off since Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. They did have to report to the Advent Health Training Facility today for COVID testing, but they had the day off. There was no meetings or anything like that, no lifting. That will come tomorrow, and so that's the schedule. So tomorrow, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and then the players have a walkthrough on Friday before Sunday's game. Bucs time 12, 13, and 4. Been calling it realistic. That was my season prediction at the beginning of the season, 13 and 4. I'm more inclined to say 14 and 3 right now, depending on that.
Yep.
So.
For sure. Could be. Hey, head on over and check out our friends over at livinggolflife.com. We got the best stuff. We got polos, hats, all the above. Check out their Instagram. Check out all the stuff that they're putting out. They've got some new stuff coming up pretty soon on the site. Great gifts, great stuff for you when you're out going on the golf course as well. Great guys, and they've just got a tremendous brand that they're building over there. So make sure you check out them and check out all that they're into over there. We'll be back on the podcast Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Drew, we appreciate the super chat. Glad you were able to catch us live for a little bit. We appreciate you all jumping in here and joining with us on the show. Great turnout for the Monday show, as it always is. And we're excited about the Wednesday show. We'll preview this upcoming game against the Bears and talk in depth about it, and as well as all the things coming up for the Bucs this season, 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. Make sure you're subscribed up to Pewter Report TV on YouTube. Thanks so much to everybody for listening and to another great edition on the Pewter Report podcast. Out.